So boys and girls, right now we are doing chapter 13, lesson 4. We are learning to measure area. So our learning intention is that I'm learning to measure area so that I can measure the surface of figures. Our vocabulary is the word area. That means the number of square units needed to cover a figure without overlapping. Sometimes you need to count the number of half square units. And we're going to really focus on that today, is making sure that we understand how to count those half square units. Okay, so these are the pages that we will be doing today. We'll be on page 771, 772, and 773. So get your books out and get ready to start writing down some math answers. Let's go to page 771 first. I'll try and get the other page off the screen so that we're not distracted by the extra doodads in the border. Okay, so as I said before, area is the number of square units needed to cover a figure without overlapping. Sometimes you need to count the number of half square units covered by the figure. So if you look right here, you will see some examples of half square units. So if you think of these like sandwiches, you know how sometimes you have your adult cut your sandwich on the diagonal, like this one or this one, or sometimes you have your adult cut your sandwich in half vertically, like this one, or horizontally, like this one, and you still have the same amount of sandwich. You still have one whole sandwich, but you've cut them into two half pieces. So if you think of it like that, that will help you to understand the half units in area. Okay, so let's keep moving. Example number 1. In art class, Haley drew the figure at the right on grid paper. What is the area of the figure Haley drew? So first we'll count the number of whole squares because that's the easiest to do. Now there are faint blue lines in here. It may be hard to see on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill them in for you right there because I can barely see them. Okay, so there we go. So there's the lines that you really can't see. And so if you count the whole square units first, and I'm just going to make a dot in each one instead of trying to write numbers in these little squares. And they did it down here for you, but I want to show you how to do it. So I'm going to do it on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there are 14 whole squares. It's easiest if you count the whole ones first, get rid of those, and then do your half squares. So you're going to count the number of half squares. There are 2 half squares. There's this one and this one. So we know that 2 halves makes 1 whole, and so all we have to do is add them together. So 14 whole squares plus 2 half squares. Your 2 half squares is the same as 1 whole square. So they just add the 14 whole squares to 1 whole square, which 14 plus 1 is 15 whole squares. So the area is 15 square units. You drop the word whole. And remember that when you're labeling area, that you say the shape, which is always square, and then you say the unit of measurement. Now, if they don't tell you centimeters or inches or feet or yards or meters or kilometers, you are just going to use the word units. It's generic. It's like, what are you eating? I'm eating cereal. What kind of cereal? Well, I'm eating cornflakes. So units is like eating cereal, and inches is like eating cornflakes. It's more specific. So for now, we are just worried about units. Okay, so let's move on to page 772. Now look up at the very, very top. I'm going to highlight this to point it out to you. If you want to highlight it in your book, you're welcome to do that. You can underline it, draw a circle around it, put a box around it. Okay. Sometimes the units on drawings or figures represent another unit of measurement. So it's not always units. I just talked about that. Sometimes it's more specific, that it's centimeters or inches or something like that. So just remember that it's always square and then whatever the name of the measurement is, and they'll tell you in the word problem. So let's look at this problem. Wasn't letting me go back to pen. Silly thing. Okay, so Raphael created the geoboard figure at the right to represent a design he created. One square unit on the geoboard represents 1 square centimeter. Here's your cornflakes right here. Okay, we're not just dealing with cereal now, we're dealing with cornflakes. We're more specific. It's not units, it's centimeters. Okay, so represents 1 square centimeter on the design. What's the area of the design? So number 1, we count the number of whole squares. So let's look at this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the dots on here so that I know where my whole squares are and my half squares. Okay. I'm going to do all my vertical ones first. And I'm staying inside the yellow yarn. I'm not going outside of it because it'll just get confusing. Okay. So then I'm going to connect these dots here, these dots here, these dots here, these dots here. Okay. If you want to trace that on yours, it'll probably help you to see it better. Okay. So now I'm going to take a different color and I'm going to just make dots to count the whole square. So let's see, blue probably won't show up too well. Let's do orange. Okay. So I'm going to do my whole squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 whole squares. Now, if you notice, I have not connected all of my dots yet because I didn't do the ones that are on a diagonal. Partly that was a mistake, but it turned out okay because I want to show this to you. So I'm going to go along the edges of the yellow yarn so that I can see my half units. Okay, and now let's combine half units. Okay, so this one here and this one here are 2 halves. So that makes 1. Oops, I forgot some of my things here. Hold on. Let me grab my green again. Forgot these 2. Sorry, my bad. Okay, and now let's continue to connect our half units. I remember these. Here's 2 half units. So that's another one. Here's 2 half units, so that's another 1 whole. And here's 2 half units, so there's another 1 whole. So if I add those up, I have 4 whole squares. Let me scroll up so I'm not writing at the very bottom of my screen. Okay, so I had 4 sets of half squares. It's 8 halves, but when you combine them, it's 4 whole units. Okay, so there are, oh, they did that. There are 8 half squares, so 8 halves equals 4 wholes. Okay, it's easier if you just connect them like I did. Just connect this one, this one, this one, this one. You can even count the arches. 1, 2, 3, 4, or the lines that tie them together, however you want to call it. Okay, so then you're going to add. They made this a little harder than it needs to be, if you ask me. But 8 whole squares plus 8 half squares. Okay, 8 half squares is the same as 4 whole squares. So then I'm going to add 8 whole squares to 4 whole squares. So 8 plus 4 is 12. So it's 12 whole squares. So the area is 8 square units, but they should have put the right label. They have it down here, though, at the bottom. But let's look. Let's look up at our word problem again. Remember, I drew a box around it, 1 square centimeter. So that label changes, whoops, from units to centimeters. Okay? So I have, what did I do? I did this wrong. Wait, let me back up. Okay, 12 whole squares. So the area is 12 square units, not 8 square units. The area of the design is 12 square centimeters. Okay, square centimeters is what they told us each of those squares was. Okay, hopefully I didn't confuse you too much by making that mistake. 8 plus 4 is 12. All right. All right, let's go over to independent practice. If you are not in my class, you can, oh, wait a minute, we have guided practice. My bad. I didn't scroll down far enough. Here we go. Okay, so this is the part where I will explain what to do. You'll pause the video and do it, and then unpause the video and see if you got the answer right. Okay, so let's look. Oh, this one has kind of orangey. Let's change colors. Red seems to be a good color because they don't seem to use a lot of red. Okay, so we're going to find the area of each figure. So you have some whole units. You're going to count the wholes, and then you're going to count the halves. And you know what? They should not have done this one because I told my class that they only give them to you in pairs. And now I see, and I even double checked it and it looked like it was right. They're going to give you half units and I don't think you need those. So let's take off this half unit here. And let's just make the shape like this. Okay. We're doing it together. So don't worry about it. Let me mark that in black to make it clearer because they left you with a half unit out there and we're not doing mixed numbers. So I think that's a mistake in the book. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a line here and you're not gonna do this part, okay? So count the whole units and then you have 2 half units there. So you are going to fill in the answer there. So pause the video and then come back and we'll figure it out together. Okay, so whole units, 1, 2, 3 whole units plus, and then I have 2 half units, which is 1. So 3 plus 1 is 4. So this one is 4 square units. I should have switched colors. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, I want you to connect the dots and trace over the yellow like I did on the other problem. And then figure out how many square units show you're adding in the white space, and then we'll do it together. Pause the video. Okay, so like I said, trace, connect the dots, stay inside of your figure. Okay, now we're going to count the whole units. 1, 2, 3, 4 whole units, and I have 1 set of half units. 4 plus 1 is 5. So it is 5 square units. Okay, now the independent practice. If you are not in my class, you can go on with your directions that your teacher gave you. If you are in my class, you need to pay close attention because 2 of the problems in here we're going to do together and I have special directions for it. Okay, so my class. Number 3 and number 4 and number 5 and number 6, you are going to count the whole squares, write the number in the white space, then count your half units, put that number in the white space and add them up. You need to show the math. Okay, I'm going to write that here. Show the math, and I'm going to write it right in the spot where I want you to show it. Don't write show math. You need to actually show me the math. Show math in this white space. Okay, down here, show your math. Just like I was demonstrating for you. You get more right answers by doing plenty of work, and you get more wrong answers by cutting corners. So show your math for all 4 of these problems. It will not be considered complete if you don't, and I will send it back to you. Okay, down here at the bottom, we're going to do 7 and 8 together, and then you're going to do 9 and 10. However, this page is not going to be considered done unless you've done 7 and 8. So it won't count towards your grade. I'm not going to grade it because we are doing it together. But if you don't show all the work on 7 and 8, I'm not going to accept it as done. So make sure that you copy 7 and 8. Okay, so number 7, we're going to count our whole units. This one's easy. There are no half units. So I'm just going to make a mark in each one so I don't double count. Remember, it says find the area of each shaded region if 1 square unit represents 1 square inch. So we have our marching orders for our measurement. Okay? But they've already labeled it for us, so it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, so we're going to count our whole units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? 12 square inches. There's really no math to show on this one because there are no half units. Okay? So let's go ahead and do this number 8. Okay, I'd take a phone call, so there's probably a bad edit in the middle of this video. So we're going to do number 8. So first we are going to count the whole units like we did before. So let's count those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9 whole squares. And then we're going to tie together our half squares. And you know what? They are giving us an odd number of squares. That's interesting. Okay, so let's do this one that way. So here's 1 whole square. And then here we have a half square right here. We don't have another one to go with it. So if you add these together, 9 plus 1 is 10. And so it's 10 and a half square units. Okay, so I don't think you don't have the problem on the other 2. So you won't have that 10 and a half thing going on. Okay, so you need to do 9 and 10 on your own. On 10, you won't really have any math to show, but on this one, you need to show the math. Okay, it's fine if you just count number 10. You don't have to show me the math. Okay, so there you go. That's how you do those pages.